Hey, what's going on, Well family? Wanted to give us a little bit of an update with the coronavirus and really how we're responding and how our hearts should be responding in the midst of this time. You know, literally week by week, at times day by day, there's just shifts in information. And so I want to keep us updated as to what we're doing and how we can be thinking about this as a church. You know, one of the things that I wanted to focus on today was the reality of just the mourning and the chaos that this has resulted in our own lives. And I want to call us actually to mourn with those who are mourning. You know, we've actually had people in our church who have lost family members or friends to the coronavirus. And so there's a reality to this pandemic that's really impacting people's lives, because we are a church, we are a people who value life above really almost everything else in the world. Like, man, that should make us discouraged, frustrated, mourn, because that's not what the kingdom will be like. In the kingdom, there will be no more death. In the kingdom, there will be no more virus, no more disease. And so we mourn with those who are losing people because of this. And we want to even then respond in the midst of that by being socially conscious, by listening to officials that are saying, hey, look, just wear masks. And it's like, man, if that's all it takes to love our neighbor, like let's be the people that lead in that way. Let's actually do that and show our care for others as we do that. And so I want to encourage you to love your neighbor as yourself in that way, regardless of what you think about this. There's people that are mourning. We want to mourn with them and respond in that mourning. Remember, we are not just the people who talk about things, we respond. The gospel always moves us to action. And so we want to think, how can we be actionable in this way? Man, that's one of them. There's a whole other group of people that are mourning in a different way, and they've lost economic profits and literally businesses because of this, or emotionally there is depression and anxiety that's occurring because of the lack of connectivity. And we want to mourn with them as well and say, no, that makes sense. That's not how it will be in the kingdom either. There will be nothing that separates us from each other, and this has been separating us in different ways. And so we rightly mourn with you as well. Both of these things do not have to be at odds with one another. In reality, they can both exist at the same time. People are losing life, people are losing income and their livelihood and how to take care of their families or whatever it might be. And we want to respond to that too. We set up the COVID-19 fund to try to help in response to that. And we try to be connected as best as we can through Zoom when it looked like the virus was kind of going down, through connecting again. And then in seasons where it's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's still some danger out there, we want to respond socially conscious and say, hey, look, maintain social distancing or go back to Zoom until it's safe again. And we want to rightly bend as, listen, we don't know the future. We don't know what next week holds. It can decrease or increase. Our God knows the future though. And so we want to keep trusting in God's sovereignty while also responding to the reality that's in front of us right now. And so one of the things that we're even doing is to hopefully increase connectivity, and that relational miss that we have right now are prayer and worship nights. And one of them is coming up towards the end of July, and we hope that we'll be able to actually connect together. That might be in our cars, that might be outside, socially distanced with masks on, but just something to be able to connect. And listen, y'all, we might get to the day before and we might have to cancel it because things shift. And so we ask for your grace, or really more so, not just grace, but actually unity in the midst of it, knowing that each of us are struggling with different things, and how can we respond in a way that is unified with one another rather than divisive, because divisiveness and separation is what Satan does. Unity and togetherness is what the gospel is and what Christ does. And so we want to strive for that despite even our different thinking around this issue. You know, one thing just to encourage us on as we continue to fight forward together is we don't know what the late summer, early fall, what winter will hold. It's hard to make plans when we don't know what's going to happen in the midst of this, but I want us to trust in our God. Our God does know. Our God is not off the throne. All of what we talked about in the Sovereign series is still true today, because God is still working in the midst of this. And even amongst death, and even amongst loss, There are people that are coming to faith because of this pandemic. There are people that are rededicating their lives to Christ because of this pandemic. And as much as earthly loss is miserable and we don't want to go through it and it does suck, it does actually move us to emotion, oftentimes it does breed spiritual life. And so while we're mourning, we're also rejoicing that God is moving and we're trusting in his movement, despite how it might be impacting us personally, as I'm sure it's impacted each of us differently in different ways. And so as time goes on, we'll keep giving updates. Literally, we might say something one week and then we might have to change it 2 days later. I mean, give us grace in the midst of that. We're trying to respond as right and as we're following the lead of others who know what they're talking about in this area. And we just want to really be the church. We want to love on each other. We want to be connected to one another. We want to mourn with those who are mourning. We want to love our neighbor. All of those things can exist at the same time. And at times, outside forces try to make those at odds with one another. No, all these things can be together. And so we want to do that as best as possible. So that's update. I know it's kind of like, what are we doing? It's hard to tell. There's not much of an update. There's some things coming, some ability to possibly connect. The COVID-19 fund still exists for those who are hurting. We may reopen it back up to re-give to it in case there's others that need, and if those funds kind of, if they go away, if there's no more of them. And we want to mourn with those who have lost people, and all of those things can be reality at once. And so let's do that together as a church. Let's be together in the midst of this season of disunity in our world. Let us show the world that we love one another by the way that we love each other. That's how the world will know that we are his disciples. Let's be disciples of Christ in this season, y'all. So I love you guys. We'll keep updating you as time goes on. But let's really bless each other in the midst of all of this chaos of the world. God is in control. He is the God over the chaos, and he brings order to it in the exaltation of his name. Let's exalt his name together. I love you guys.